Vigilante is Horikoshi making an imitation of his own manga, based on what everyone was telling him would be a better beginning for My Hero Academia. It would be much better if the main character wasn't handed the most powerful quirk and became a hero through his actions instead of how many points he gathers in some school competition. Too bad nobody cared about a better beginning, since My Hero Academia was never about good writing. It was a power fantasy about a loser getting the most broken power and becoming the greatest McDonald's employee. Beyond that, the first episode of Vigilante is mostly a rehash of the first episode of My Hero Academia. Same infodump about the quirks, same infodump about All Might maintaining peace, same kind of wimp protagonist getting bullied and wishing he had a strong quirk, and the same kind of bimbo flashing her ass to the crowd so the same gooners can come watching the show and ruin everything from within. A big twist comes when Vigilante jumps straight to the finale of My Hero Academia, with the protagonist being a depressed wage slave nobody cares about. I'm pretty sure many fans will appreciate the rehash of the mental trauma he gave them with the way he ended My Hero Academia. Do you want french fries? Have a plus ultra day? So this protagonist eventually gets fed up with his life and says, "Screw the law, I will do anything I want." Which is such a heroic thing to say to the audience, most of which have been brainwashed to think heroism means doing whatever you want, including taking pleasure in torturing your enemies before you kill them. Yup, that's what true heroism is all about. Anyways, the wimp protagonist of Vigilante tries to redeem himself and to make the world forgive him by breaking the law. Because that is what redemption means these days. Being a lawful citizen who has a simple life is a crime. Being a vigilante who breaks the law and does whatever he likes is a redemption arc. Anyways, we finally get something entirely different when he encounters one-dimensional evil rapists who are assaulting a half-naked pop idol. Horikoshi shows us fresh material by rehashing one of the more overused and despised tropes of light novels, which I am sure the audience is going to appreciate so well. They are rescued by this story's version of All Might, who is just a Stain wannabe, only one without the charm or the impact of the original. I am pretty sure the audience is going to appreciate this lifeless rehash of the original. So this guy says real heroism has nothing to do with going to a school to get a license or being popular. Real heroism is about doing what you have to do when the time comes. Now this is where I agree with the show. My Hero Academia had no idea what heroism is actually about, and nobody ever fixed the wrong impression everybody had about it. Not even in the finale. It was still a popularity contest and who gets to be the richest. I'm pretty sure the audience is going to appreciate this far more honest view on heroism, and is not going to hate it because they think someone like the protagonist of Solo Leveling is a true hero. So these vigilantes have to deal with a quirk enhancing drug, because why bother to escalate things organically by first dealing with typical villains, before they get to fight enhanced ones? In fact, why bother giving the protagonist a family, or a sad backdrop, or a gay boyfriend bully? How is he going to be instantly likable to the Gen Zs without a gay boyfriend bully? I mean, he's not a crying man-child, which is a plus, but he is still very blunt, which is an equally big minus. There was not much thought put behind his creation. Horikoshi just made a slight variation of Deku without the extra details. It is also not a show that fixed My Hero Academia, proven by how the vast majority of the audience never cared about the manga, and it sure as hell doesn't care about the anime. And let's be honest, the My Hero Academia hype is gone, and now most people, including the fans, hate everything Horikoshi makes. It's either gonna be people who hate him for not making most of his characters queer or black, or people who hate those fans who don't care about anything beyond making all the characters queer or black. As for the very few remaining fans who still somehow like the show, they are only here for one reason. Thus, as a whole, Vigilante is a failure right from the start, in a season that doesn't even have any competition. Can you believe that the highest show so far is Windbreaker? Who the shit even talks about that anime? Who is going to remember it? Definitely more people than Vigilante. Yes, it's that bad. I want to make a clarification. Some of you told me Vigilante is not written or drawn by Horikoshi, and therefore he's not responsible for whatever happens in it. That's not entirely true, since he still had to approve what is going on in it. Everybody is telling me it expands on the lore and the themes without contradicting whatever happens in the core series. Therefore, it's not completely filler and it's not disconnected from My Hero Academia. Horikoshi was still responsible for whatever happens in it. and whatever happens in it has very little appeal. The main reason every shonen tard was hooked on Deku's journey right from the start was the same reason any power fantasy uses to be successful. Because he had the most broken power, and he told us he's gonna be the greatest hero at the end of the series. It never happened, obviously. He ended up as a wage slave, nobody knew if he exists or not. But the potential was there, and it was enough to grab all the introvert boys out there. This Koichi, on the other hand, he's not a power fantasy, and he has no potential. He has a crappy power, he does silly things, and he never promises you he's gonna be the greatest vigilante. And since this is a prequel of My Hero Academia, we already know he remains a nobody because nobody ever mentioned him. He would be working the same McDonald's as Deku for all we care. The same can be said about the mentor. He's no All Might, he's not the greatest hero, he doesn't have the most powerful quirk, he doesn't make the meatheads G's whenever he yells Texas Smash, and he doesn't promises you he will die heroically so that Deku can succeed him. That last part never happened, obviously. He's still alive and well at the end of the series, but that is not what he was telling you at first, and which was the thing everybody was looking forward to. Knuckle Duster is a nobody, with no powers, sleeping in the trash, and nobody ever mentioned him in My Hero Academia. Why would anyone give a shit about him? And then, oh boy, here comes the obligatory girl in the team who is just there for the fan service. Uraraka in My Hero Academia was promising you she would be a strong and independent woman who would need no man to take care of her family. This never happened either. She ended up being a generic love interest for Deku with no agency of her own. But that is not what the show was promising at first. On the other hand, there is nothing to look forward to from Pop Step. She just exists to be a slut for the otakus to jerk off to. And she couldn't even do that because the anime made her a lot less sexual and destroyed the only thing she exists for. That's right, Chibi and every gooner out there were furious about the censorship because they couldn't come without her being a complete slut. Since that is the only kind of people who are still interested in this garbage IP. And then there is the action, which is terrible. My Hero Academia never had much of a battle choreography. It was just Deku and All Might going one punch man on every enemy they faced. But it was enough to make the meatheads G's whenever they were yelling Texas Smash! There is no such thing in Vigilante. Everyone has very basic powers. And despite the attempt to have battle choreography, it is terrible. Everyone is constantly teleporting where they need to be. It's like speed and distance don't matter one bit. There were multiple times when they saved someone who is falling by moving faster than sound, despite telling you in the first episode that a bike can outrun them. The show is basically treating you like an idiot. Worse still, it didn't even have worthy finishers. No villain was defeated in a cool way, it was just a Razorhead appearing and taking away their powers, thus having completely anticlimactic battles. There is nothing to enjoy here. Even if you try to excuse Vigilante as a show that is not trying to be a power fantasy which constantly promises you amazing things and never delivers on anything, which is what My Hero Academia is in a nutshell, it doesn't mitigate that by doing something else better. It's worse in every conceivable way, which is reflected in the average score that keeps dropping. It was 758 last week. People are more interested in watching typical teenagers punching each other typically in typical schools. That's what Windbreaker is. They would rather watch that instead of superheroes doing superheroic things in the prequel of what was once considered to be the new gold standard for shonen anime. Vigilantes managed to become unfocused in just 2 episodes. Nothing significant is happening. Episode 3 is just gooning over the pop idol undressing, something which has nothing heroic about it. More McDonald's scenes where the protagonist admits his life is completely meaningless, and unlike Deku he has nothing to look forward to. Then the pop idol gets sexually assaulted by a monster because she was making men horny. And then the good guys use her as bait by letting the villain to actually sexually assault her, and she's somehow fine with being treated as a piece of meat. Why is she even surprised when the villain wants to do hentai things to her? And how is the audience supposed to like her after this? She belongs in a bottom-tier harem, not in a superhero show. What's even worse is that nothing came out of this skirmish. They cut the pervert and they weren't any closer to finding out who is behind this mess. They just return home for more sex jokes. What was the point of this episode? It ruined the good guys because not only they objectify women, they also fail to produce results from the arrest. Not even the instant villains are interesting anymore. At first I thought they were willingly accepting to use the drug because the society feels unjust to them, but on this episode they are just random people who transform against their will. They don't even have agency anymore, they're just treated as background crowds that get brainwashed into monsters. What is this bullshit? The fourth episode was even more unfocused. First, it's about a teenage whore who is luring men so she can turn them to villains. The camera goes as far as constantly zooming on her thighs. It comes off as more gooning material than some dark theme Horikoshit would approve of. In fact, I now doubt he even approved of anything in this stupid show. All the females are gooning material, and the men are all worse than Mineta. And what's this nonsense about licensed heroes being fine with civilians using their quirks without a license? They made such a huge fuss about that being illegal in My Hero Academia, and now they just casually allow it? This doesn't expand on the lore and the themes of the main series, it openly contradicts them. Why was Deku never given the option to be a vigilante or the assistant of a hero? Why was he scolded for using his powers without a license? This is not what happens here. This whole show is bullshit.